I was
And it was
the
vilified.
first time I did MDMA, it took me half an hour to take I was so petrified because I don't do drugs. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm a good girl. This is not something that I participate in. And they were just very gentle. Like I had the best
Um,
facilitators, but I sort of had like the maps, kind of like two sitters and all of that, sort of, emulating what they're studying at maps. And it was hard. It was hard to get over that I'm not this is ecstasy. I'm about to take Molly. This is the thing that, they're doing at the raves. Like, that's not who I am. I'm an academic. Like, this is, I'm a smart person. Why am I doing this? It took me a long time to get out, like, just that mental leap. There was a bit of a vastness that I didn't know was there that I had to cross.
so I want to slow down here for a moment, Stephanie, because this is, I think, such a important relational moment for our listeners and viewers. There's a lot of people who maybe feel the way that you and I felt, that I grew up totally square, didn't smoke pot, certainly wasn't taking ecstasy at raves. I was in the library, right? Like that's where I hung out through most of my 20s. And so it wasn't until I was in my 50s that I took that leap of faith and I started to see the literature on resolving trauma with MDMA assisted therapy, with LSD assisted therapy, with ketamine assisted therapy, with psilocybin assisted therapy. And that combined with some trauma in my family of origin, a big fight with one of my siblings, that got me to say, okay, even though, I was part of the Nancy Reagan era of just say no to drugs, I decided to take that leap. What got you to take that leap?
It, I wish I could. I wish I could say it was my intuition. It was just all of the interest that I had in Rick Doblin's work, and I was like, this is really interesting, and was introduced to some therapists that were doing it, and they were replicating. They were trying to replicate the same situation, like the same set and setting and intention. And there was lots of meetings before the ceremony. It wasn't just, hey, we're just going to pop in and, dance around. It was like they wanted to understand who I was and what I was looking to get out of the therapy, a little bit about my history. And so for me, I was sick of, I think I was at my own wit's end with having dealing with some of the anxiety that I was having, the toxic stress that you talk about, feeling bored. You mentioned in the book, like, I always felt bored if something wasn't happening. And I had Nicole LePera on the show, and I remember telling her, like, sometimes I would just send like a little text. If I was a little bit agitated at my partner, I would just send something, like, just, how's he going to react to this, And so I would create drama because I think I was actually addicted to that neurochemical cascade of the cortisol and and like my heart pumping and all of the, the adrenaline, the noradrenaline, that big stress cascade that happens when you're about to get into a big fight, because that's kind of how I grew up. So you sort of, even though you know that it's a dysfunctional pattern, you seek to consciously or unconsciously recreate it in adulthood. So I was sick personally of that pattern coming up over and over again in my life, and just reading all of the things that Doblin was doing. I was like, I have to try this, because I had, like you, tried talk therapy, felt like I was like, I feel like I'm doing something. Is something happening? Like, I did just speak with someone for an hour, so sort of waiting for the transformation. And then other times with talk therapy, I felt like I had sort of opened Pandora's box, and then it was like, well, we're at 48 minutes now. We'll just like wrap this up, and we'll see you next week. And then I didn't have the skill set to deal with the emotional, like everything that I had sort of opened up. I also felt like I didn't have the skill set to deal with it. So it would throw me off. It would disrupt my workflow. It would disrupt my day, my sometimes several days in a row. So what I felt, at least from the MDMA, was just, it took, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, for me, it was work. It wasn't ecstasy in I just worked for 6 hours. It was just like physical shaking. Like I was just shaking. I was exhausted. I was sore the next day. It was a workout. I worked, WERK. I worked. And I've done it now 4 times. And I think the last time I did it was, pre-pandemic. Yeah, I think pre-pandemic. Last time I did it. And each time I worked, and at the last sort of, the 11th hour on the last session that I did, I sort of felt like I spoke to the divine feminine. Like there was this like sparkles and the gold and the pink swirls when that voice was like, you're okay. You're not behind. Everything you're doing you're not behind. You're not ahead. You're exactly where you should be. You're doing great. You're worthy. You're totally lovable. All of these things that I, in the past, and let's be honest, still do struggle with in a way. Like, is it good enough? Is this podcast, is it delivering enough value? Am I being a good enough wife, a good enough mother? All of these questions always are ruminating somewhere. But those sessions really did help dial down the intensity of that. And it allowed me to have more empathy for, and we'll talk about what, entheogen or empathogen is, but it allowed me to have more forgiveness, perspective, love for myself, for that little like baby Steffi who had to endure what she had to endure and develop the strategies that she had to do with the limited life experience that she had, to have more love for that young girl than versus trying to run away from her, versus trying to lock her in my dungeon and never talk to her.
Whew. Good stuff. Really good stuff.
Tell me where I need to send the bill, Sarah. Like this.
The bill is we're going to do a cold plunge together. We're going to lift heavy. And then we're going to have a great protein snack afterwards.
Exactly.
That's the bill.
Exactly.
Yeah.